Just when it seemed like Russia had suffered a crushing defeat in Syria after the fall of Bashar al-Assad's government, new revelations are changing the story completely. Did you know that in the final hours of his rule, Assad secretly transferred $135 billion in financial reserves to Russia? This strategic move not only thwarted Syria's enemies, but also strengthened Moscow's position on the world stage. How did they do it? What does this mean for the future of the region? The last days of Bashar al-Assad's government in Syria were marked by chaos, desperation, and a series of strategic moves that have recently come to light. The West talks about a Russian defeat, but the reality might be very different. When the collapse of the Syrian state became inevitable, both Assad and his Russian and Iranian allies knew there was no time to waste. The first signs came with the fall of Aleppo, a critical moment that showed the Syrian army had lost the will to fight. Thousands of soldiers began to desert, abandoning their positions, their equipment, and in many cases their country. Recently released images show the extent of the collapse. Uniforms, weapons, and military vehicles were abandoned in the desert, while bases in Damascus and other strategic points were left empty. The soldiers who were still active simply retreated to the coastal cities, leaving much of the territory in the hands of terrorist groups and rebels. But what seemed like absolute chaos hid a carefully designed plan. According to reports revealed by the Turkish newspaper Turkey Gazette and confirmed by the transitional government in Syria, Assad had begun moving the country's financial reserves to Russia long before his final fall. The transfer of $135 billion. In the final hours of his government, and taking advantage of the cover of the airfields in Latakia and Damascus, Assad coordinated a massive financial evacuation operation. Russian cargo planes, many of them with their transponders turned off, made secret flights to transfer $135 billion in Syrian reserves to the Russian Federation. This move was carried out under strict control. Russia deployed GPS jamming systems in the region to prevent the planes from being tracked, which caused confusion in satellite systems and led to rumors that even Assad's own plane had been shot down. The success of this operation cannot be fully understood without analyzing the key role played by Russian President Vladimir Putin. This move was not just an act of support for Bashar al-Assad's government, but a demonstration of Russia's ability to maneuver in the complexities of a geopolitical conflict and safeguard its strategic interests in the region. From the beginning of the Syrian conflict, Putin understood that Russia's future in the Middle East depended on its ability to maintain its influence in the Mediterranean and protect its military bases in Latakia and Tartus. These facilities are not only key to Russian operations in the region, but also a symbol of Moscow's military and geopolitical power. When the fall of Assad's government became inevitable, Putin made quick and calculated decisions to ensure that Russia did not come out of the conflict empty-handed. Under his leadership, a plan was launched that combined advanced technology, diplomatic maneuvers, and precise military operations to transfer Syria's financial reserves to Russian soil. The use of military technology, such as GPS jamming systems, shows the level of preparation and sophistication of this operation. These systems, which blocked tracking signals in the region, were key to Russian cargo ships transporting Syrian reserves without being detected by Assad's enemies. In the Western media, the dominant narrative has been that the Russian withdrawal from Syria is a sign of defeat. However, the facts tell a different story. Putin managed to preserve Syria's most important assets and prevent them from falling into the hands of terrorist groups or rival governments. Furthermore, by bringing these reserves to Russia, he further strengthened the Russian economy, which has faced international sanctions for years. Putin also used this situation to send a clear message to the world. Russia does not abandon its allies and always finds a way to turn challenges into opportunities. This move reinforces Putin's image as a strategic leader, willing to make bold decisions to protect his country's interests. On the domestic front, this operation was used by Putin to consolidate his position against criticism. At a time when the West is increasing sanctions against Russia and seeking to isolate it on the international stage, the transfer of $135 billion from Syria to Moscow is presented as a triumph. This money not only strengthens Russian reserves, but also allows Putin to demonstrate that his foreign policy continues to generate tangible benefits for the country. Furthermore, Continued control of the bases in Latakia and Tartus ensures that Russia maintains a strategic presence in the Mediterranean, which strengthens its ability to project power not only in the Middle East but also in Europe and North Africa. With Syrian reserves now under his control, Putin has new tools to face the economic and political challenges facing his country. This move could be used to finance additional military operations, stabilize the Russian economy, or even increase its influence in other international conflicts. What is clear is that Putin has shown, once again, that he is willing to play the geopolitical game on his own terms. While some criticize him for prioritizing Russia's interests over those of its allies, others see these actions as an example of strong and strategic leadership in times of crisis. Russia's strategic withdrawal from Syria not only highlights Vladimir Putin's skill as a strategist, but also reinforces his legacy as a leader who prioritizes his country's interests above all else. As the world debates the implications of this move, one thing is certain: Putin remains a key player on the global geopolitical chessboard, and this operation in Syria is a reminder of his ability to turn an apparent defeat into a strategic triumph. While the West celebrates what it considers a defeat for Moscow, the facts reveal a very different story. Instead of a chaotic withdrawal, Russia managed to preserve two of its most strategic bases in the Mediterranean, Latakia and Tartus. Furthermore, the enormous financial reserves evacuated from Syria are now part of the assets of the Russian Federation, strengthening its economic position at a crucial time. The evacuation operation was an example of strategic planning and execution. Through secret flights and covert diplomatic maneuvers, Moscow achieved what many thought impossible: extracting the most valuable resources from a collapsing country while maintaining its military presence at key points. Of course, this move has not been without its critics. Some see it as a selfish act that left Syria even more vulnerable, while others interpret it as a necessary measure to prevent the country's resources from falling into the hands of terrorists or geopolitical rivals. What some see as a Russian defeat is, in reality, a carefully orchestrated strategic withdrawal. With its bases intact and $135 billion in its coffers, Moscow has shown that even in the midst of chaos, it can find opportunities to consolidate its power.